Hi-ho, let's fucking go, as the 7 great dwarves once said. A two-handed hello to you. My name is Kath, and I am doing a series here on my channel loosely centered around the theme of living alone and dedicated to such topics as I have staved off the algorithm-fed impulse to make dedicated living alone vlogs in the modern tradition of the lifestyle girly, but I realized I do have some thoughts to add to the heap. And what is the point of me having a YouTube channel if not that? This will be my installment on my analysis of loneliness. There will also be an apartment tour and then what I've actually learned from living alone to start in this little concoction. So if you do have questions for me after a year of living alone as an extrovert in a new city, not being partnered, etc., leave those in the comments and I will extract from them. I try to say this with every advice video I've done, and it honestly applies to like literally any video you've ever seen on the internet, but take what's helpful from this and leave the rest. I'm very cognizant that not everything I say here will be relevant to everyone, and that will forever be true when I'm speaking from my own subjective experience. For example, I may say that going to concerts alone is a good way to avoid loneliness and feel more in community. But in your head, you may be thinking to yourself, no, I really only benefit from going to concerts with other people. And to that end, I say I respect you, and that I've brought in a sponsor that can actually support us both in our distinct but connected aims, and that is SeatGeek. Concerts in recent history have played a really meaningful role in bringing me closer together with people. I really don't know if I'd have the friendship I do today with my friend Deanne if it weren't for a King Princess concert back in 2019 that my friend Ellie flaked on and gave the ticket telling Deanne to go with me, and that was our sort of first time hanging out one-on-one, not in a friend group. And that was a very generative opportunity for us both because now we find so much comfort in each other's companionship, and an extra concert ticket was the catalyst in all of that. SeatGeek is a time-honored tradition here within the YouTube community, but if you've managed to evade its existence in its entirety or need a reminder, it is a ticketing app that makes buying tickets to live events super simple, so it's not just concerts. Most recently, I used the SeatGeek app to get tickets to Lucy Dacus when she was up here in Seattle. I'm pretty sure I used either Cody or Noelle's SeatGeek code to get the $20 off, so my friend and I's tickets only ended up being like $23 each or something, which is such a steal. And it's actually prescriptive on the app whether or not the ticket you're looking at is a good deal or not. You'll see green dots flagging good deals and then red dots marking bad ones. So if there are shows or festivals you've been looking out for, I know I have been eyeing Corona Capital in Mexico City in November. So if you want to see me there, all tickets on the SeatGeek app can be $20 off if you use my code Katherout. That would be a whole $20 off your first purchase with SeatGeek with the code Katherout. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app. I am nothing but honored to be a part of a long legacy of SeatGeek YouTuber promo codes. So, kind of feels like when an up-and-coming indie artist makes it onto Jimmy Fallon or SNL. Like, this is kind of my moment. This whole video kind of came up for me out of talking with my friend Cam about almost the power of loneliness as a motivational tool, which may sound so backwards and honestly perverse, but just in general, more consideration of how we frame loneliness in our culture. One of the most helpful reframes I've heard about loneliness that first fell into my ear like 2 years ago and I still have not stopped thinking about is that we shouldn't be battling loneliness and that it does serve a purpose. There is a power to it, and I will let the good boys of Seriously Wrong, one of my favorite podcasts with nearly perfect politics, get at the heart of it.
Loneliness is what you feel when you lack human connection. So it's an indicator that there's a need that's not being met. And the fact that we have a need for human connection is actually like one of the best things about humanity. Like throughout all of human history, we've been like enmeshed in social groups with other people. Like that's how humans work. It's how we've always worked. We don't work self-sufficient alone. Humans have never been like that. And so that's like part of what humans are, species that must exist in social groups. And loneliness is part of that. Like if we didn't have loneliness and if it felt just as good to be by yourself as it felt to be around other people, then we're not a social species anymore. Like that's the same thing. Those two things are part of the same thing. So if we like the fact that we're a social species, if we think that's good, then loneliness, even though it's painful and it's definitely hurts, I'm not saying it feels good to be lonely or we should strive to make people more lonely. What I'm saying is it's good that it's an indicator of something bad going on, in the same way that like a fire alarm is good, but the fire isn't good. So loneliness is good, but what's bad is the lack of human connection, the endemic lack of human connection across society that makes it so that 1 in 4 people or 1 in 5 millennials or 54% feel this way, that like there's so much missing human connection in society right now. And that's the thing we need to combat, not the loneliness.
So if we are to understand loneliness as a sort of fire alarm for our nervous system, it becomes really a lot more important to observe your own emotions and figure out for yourself where each of them is coming from. Like that becomes so much more of a useful skill, so that when the alarm sounds, you can pinpoint, okay, I felt this before, this is loneliness, and here's what I need to do to treat this, to self-soothe myself, to seek care, whatnot. Because if you don't know where your feelings are coming from, then you don't really know how to regulate them. And I use the word regulate, not stop them or abolish them, because part of my own social emotional work over this past year, and especially after I had sort of a relapse into my depression earlier this year, was to not put value judgments on every mood that befalls me, and to honor every emotion and to have a more holistic view of my feelings, so that I'm not pathologizing my state of being. Like I'm not, okay, you're sad and that's in the bottom tier of emotions, it's the worst, and you're happy, that's the top tier of emotions. No, like I did recently rewatch Inside Out, and I'm not gonna say that it clarified some things for me in this realm, because each emotion serves a purpose. Grief serves a purpose. Anger serves a purpose. Those are definitely more challenging feelings than the state of contentment or happiness. But understanding that each emotion is a piece of your humanity, and to rid yourself of any one emotion is ridding yourself of a little piece of your humanity. And that to me is sad, and I want to stop doing that and get to more of a place of acceptance. To continue the train of thought that the Wrong Boys started in that podcast episode, I would love to start treating loneliness almost more like hunger, in that it's my body's way of telling me, hey, in the case of hunger, it's time to eat. In the case of loneliness, hey, it's time to make plans, or hey, it's time to get social. Like, it's simply a reminder of a piece of my quality of life that I need to exercise that maybe is a little bit weaker in that moment. Because if it weren't for a very strong pang of loneliness back in, I want to say March, I wouldn't have had a couple of my favorite, most precious experiences this year. I actually recorded a podcast episode for my Patreon right after I felt this pang of loneliness, documenting exactly what was going on, but it was bringing up the rear of this really profoundly treasured week I had with one of my very, very close friends, Jared. He had just stayed with me in Seattle for 5 days, and I felt such strong partnership and companionship and affection from him that was just so affirming, heartwarming, fulfilling, insert positive emotion here. And I dropped him off at the airport, drove back home, and immediately sat on the floor and posted to my close friend story on Instagram, like, hey, Jared just left. I'm like really fucking lonely. Like, I am not well. I am not doing so hot. But if it weren't, and this is what I'm getting at, if it weren't for that feeling, that pang, Caroline Polachek would have never written one of her most amazing songs. No, if it were not for that pang, I would not have ever put together what I call close friends conferences, which is a really cute and sweet little concept that I've been wanting to introduce to you all for a while. Basically, that night after Jared left, I had such a strong sense of loneliness that I was willing and desperate to do whatever it took to have experiences to look forward to with friends that I knew would fill me in a similar way. And I had known I wanted to get friends together to camp in Olympic National Park, and I had known I wanted to bring people out to Montana, but I didn't have any sense of urgency with that. And I know urgency is a really icky, like, force, but in this case it was helpful because that night I got my shit together and I booked the campsite and I figured out the dates for Montana and I posted on my close friends story on Instagram, which isn't necessarily even my close friends. It's literally just a formation of people that I think are cool, hot, and fun that I like. Like, it's really just people that I admire, am enamored by, would like to spend more time with, and have met in person before. And I basically just posted and was like, I have these 2 trips. I'm calling them close friends conferences because it's going up on my close friends story, and it's basically a conference to have all the people on that story meet, because I don't want to go my whole life and wait until an event like a wedding or a bachelorette party to get all the most important people in my life together. I think that's such a waste. Like, I just all of a sudden over the past couple of years have just remarked on how bullshit I think that is. I'm like, damn, I don't even know if I want to get married. Why would I wait until a wedding to, like, just have a wedding, you know? Like, I ended up seeing Jared a couple months later and I was joking with him that we should get all of his friends together and all of my friends together and have this big kiki, and his friend was like, isn't that just a wedding? And I was like, yeah, I guess I want to get married to Jared, but, like, I kind of just want to get married to all of my friends. Like, I want to meet all of my friends' friends, and I want my friends to meet all of my friends. Like, I just think that we're robbed so much of social connection. Like, why wait for other people to set that up for us? I just felt such an urge of, like, living in action, not reaction, and not waiting for someone else to be the kind of friend that I would like to have. Like, I'm just gonna be the kind of friend that I want to have in my life. I'm gonna be her. Like, I'm just gonna do that. And I'm like, I have always wanted my life to be invited to, like, cool, fun trips with friends, and we all see those things on Instagram, and I've told myself this story in my head that, like, those things are orchestrated in such a way, and I'll just have to wait to see if one— No. The way that those things happen is literally how I just told you. You literally just post on your story, like my friend Scarlett did, and say, hey, my sister and I want to get an Airbnb in Joshua Tree for a Big Thief concert in May. Who wants to come? And then the people that want to come will let you know, and the trip happens. Like, you simply say, hey, I want to get an Airbnb in Tahoe. Who wants to come? And, like, providing that leadership to your friendship is so nice. No one's gonna think of that as, like, I was gonna say a burden, but that feels laughable. Like, no, that's not being a burden. That's being, like, such a gracious and, like, generous friend to, like, plan these things and invite your friends and, like, you know, put in the work to make sure those things happen. Because I'm like, honestly, like, I'm 26. Like, there's a world in which maybe in 5 years, many more of my friends are settled down. It's not looking that way, but, like, it's possible. And so right now is the kind of time that people are, like, just despite how they may think of themselves, the most able to, like, just get up and go. And we're not quite settled down yet, and we don't really have restrictions of, like, childcare we need to provide. So I'm like, let's be doing these things. I basically have been having these little close friends kikis, and the nice thing is that I'm not relying on friend groups. I think friend groups are very mythical in my life. Like, I have never, like, since maybe high school or college, not really just, like, stepped into a friend group. I've kind of, like, created all of the friend groups. I don't even think that I have, like, strong friend groups, but, like, the closest thing I have to that are these close friends conferences and just the group texts that, like, come out of them to plan the trips. And then the beautiful part is, like, 2 people might meet on a close friends trip one year, and the next year they're going to each other's weddings. And, like, that's literally happening. That's literally happening. Like, so many beautiful connections can come out of loneliness. Like, I would have never planned these 2 trips if I hadn't felt this like real void. And so there is like a motivational force to loneliness. I don't demonize it as much because I just sort of recognize the purpose that it serves in my life and let it guide my life that way. I'm like, oh, it's time to like make some plans, which is easier said than done because many of us literally just don't have people to make plans with. Like that is very commonplace in our country. I think the stat was like 1 in 5 millennials say they don't have anyone that they feel close to or that they can talk to that they really trust, which is truly such a failure of modernity. Like that's just awful. We are sort of naturally progressing into what I'd like to affectionately term the unsolicited advice segment of this video. Close friends conferences kind of being the first piece of that, although I do acknowledge, as I said up top, like I do acknowledge that those fill my well as an extrovert. Like I, as an extrovert, feel my best at the top of the world, most euphoric when I'm around a group of people that I know. Like I don't necessarily love being at a frat party. In fact, I get very much nothing from that. But like being around a little pod of people at a campsite or in a cabin or at a festival is everything that I want. So the close friends conferences serve what I appreciate and I need. And I think a key part of this I would recommend to you, do some discovery of like what kinds of social interactions really make you feel full. Like, do you prefer going to concerts alone? Do you prefer going to concerts with people? Do you like one-on-one brunch hangouts? Do you like 5 days with one person in your tiny apartment? Like really what gets you going and what makes you feel the least lonely, and then really focus on that. Because I think there's a tendency to see people doing, you know, group trips to Aspen and going to raves every weekend and thinking, okay, so like I don't have that, so I'm lonely. But those things may not even make you feel full. Like that's kind of one of the worst lonely feelings, is when you do things like that with the intention of repelling some of your loneliness and it only sort of boomerangs it back in because you feel this distance from like how much better you thought that would make you feel and how much it just didn't. So really get personal about like what do you value with your social life and like what does really make you feel good. And then start to recognize the humanity in interactions you always have. As someone who just moved to my neighborhood a year ago and moved to this city a year ago and is building from scratch, like having a nice little rapport with the man that works at my local framing store or the lady that works at the sandwich shop one time, it does make me feel more connected and more latticed into the place that I live. And I don't think I had that in San Francisco because I wasn't approaching those interactions with my full self. I was really gating myself off into just like traditional small talk territory, which is maybe more conservative, safer, easier perhaps, but in many ways not as easy because you're having to mask some of like who you are in that. So this is something they mentioned on the podcast too, but like being more open about yourself in those sort of compulsory interactions with your gym receptionist, with the cashier at the grocery store, like really tell them what you did that weekend if you're comfortable, or like really be honest about your feelings. Like we are made to feel this sense of like professionalism in more capacities than just at work. And that's bullshit. Like you should be able to jump on a Zoom call and be like, my tummy hurts and I miss my mom right now. But like, because we're not able to say those things, we feel limited and more alone. So be yourself in those sort of like daily interactions, and that also opens up the person you're interacting with and models for them that like, hey, they too can just keep it real and finally just like open up as much as they want, or as much as they're able to, especially if they're on the clock. But not only that, but like in new people that you meet or social situations that you're in, like being more forthcoming about your more niche interests or passions is only helpful. Like I really have not seen it be hurtful, because if people know that you're into spirituality or labyrinths or kayaking or poetry, like then that just presents a thing that you can naturally do together the next time that you hang out. And I've done exactly that. Those are all direct examples of things that I've raked out of friends and also put forward with friends that I enjoy doing. And real recognizes real. It's really special to have a friend where it's not just brunch or drinks that you're comfortable doing together, but it's like geocaching or sketching in the park. Like I try to resist being like the most likable person in the room, because then I end up just saying the most generic thing, which is usually not very easy to connect with. It's much more easy to connect with someone when they're voicing something so clearly important to them and valuable to them and actually interesting to them. It's also very helpful to ritualize social interactions as much as you can. We're all very familiar with the concept of a book club. I have one on my Patreon if you would like to join. I find that that is a space that really eradicates loneliness in my life because you all are super great, and we've built a sense of rapport and familiarity with each other. But again, like, if you've always wanted to, so many people when they join the book club are like, I've always wanted to be a part of a book club, but I've never been invited to one. And that's exactly how I felt, so I just started one. Like, I have started to displace all of the proactivity I used to put towards my job, towards my social life, because my friends and loved ones are more important to me than my job, like my career. Like, they're up there in terms of my values, so I like to be proactive and just be the person that's like, wait, we all want this, but no one's gonna do it. Let me just do it, because I always appreciate, actually when I moved here, someone else started a book club, and I really appreciated that someone put the legwork into organizing that. Like, it's so cool. I was watching this show called, God, is it Somebody Somewhere? Yeah, Somebody Somewhere on, is it HBO? And what a charming little show. What a life-affirming program. And in it, like, they're in this little town in Kansas, and without giving too much away, like, one of the characters puts together this choir practice, which is basically like an open mic night, queer affinity space, and everyone there gets so much from it. And like, he could have just as easily not have organized that, but he did, and he created something for his community. And there's also benefit to doing that, in that you feel a sense of accomplishment and you feel a sense of reward and like true connection from awarding connections to other people. If you don't want to set it up, you can also attend somebody else's. I think if you are a faithful person, churches are a very ritualized thing to go to that help you feel less alone. Volunteer shifts are a great way to get more involved in your community. And then if you do find someone that likes to kayak with you, make it a ritualized thing. We're doing Sunday kayaks, Sunday kayaking. Make it a little thing. Maybe the first Saturday of the month, you hammock together, or the third Friday of every month you go to this one jazz club. Like, just ritualize it, because then it becomes second nature, and you don't have to spend as much labor to like actually, you don't have to put as much effort into actually planning that outing. As much as I want to empower you to reevaluate your relationship with loneliness and how you treat it when it comes up, the real final boss of loneliness, so to speak, is structural change. I tried saying this in the video, but I ended up going on this 10-minute political tangent that I don't really think is relevant to the video. But if anyone wants to hear my utopian ideas for how I'd organize society, let me know. I can do a whole video on that if it would be more helpful than this more individually focused video. But I did want to just say that, like, although there are changes you can make in your life to have a better time with loneliness, you're not wrong for feeling that way. It's a really interesting paradox where economically there's a lot that benefits from our loneliness, so we're actually encouraged to experience that emotion, but we're discouraged from talking about it, which creates this really weird vacuum where you're just forced to sort of address it privately. And because our government doesn't provide a social safety net or community resources to structurally address loneliness, we end up often just paying for things that will make it go away, which makes a lot of people a lot of money. Like, lonely people stream more content and make media and entertainment companies more money. Think of how much less YouTube would earn from revenue if no one was lonely ever and wanted to like turn on a vlog to have like a parasocial relationship. Lonely people make our healthcare system more money to medically treat their loneliness, and our seniors and the elderly are paying to live in retirement homes because we don't have neighborhoods and communities set up to include them. So they have to sort of manufacture that community in their lives. You see what I'm saying? Like, ultimately, there's so much in place to almost guarantee that you experience loneliness in your lifetime. So in many ways, the best way to fight loneliness is to push for a less profit-driven system and also start to create our own community networks and grassroots mutual aid organizations so that we can start to rely on each other instead of companies trying to profit off of us and a government that's like really not looking out for us, as most of us know by now. My camera is dying, which doesn't surprise me because I've been going one so long that like I have just produced a vat of sweat. But one of my friends offered the analogy that we're in a friend recession as an adult, which I think gets to like this sort of scarcity mindset of like, oh no, things are shrinking and fading and dying. Like it makes you feel a little frenzied. But in another way, when you consider that everyone you know is in a friend recession, it makes it easier to approach people for friendship and to seek friendship with others because everyone is always looking for it. There can never be too much friendship, and there's relief in that. Thank you for watching this video. More to come on the topic. If you have follow-up questions on anything I've said, put those in the comment section so that I can address them in upcoming parts of this series. But if you got anything out of the video, I would love to have you as a subscriber or a patron. The Patreon community is not just for the super fans, it's for anyone. I do deep cuts on there where I basically chronicle like past journals, Tumblr drafts, Twitter drafts, just anything from the annals of my mind. Like, if you like my oversharing series, you will love the deep cuts, and that's all on the Patreon. But give yourself a little hug. We're gonna be okay. I will see you all next time. Katherout.